Uncover a father's forgotten stories hidden in handcrafted memories. A sterile office breathed with the hum of fluorescent lights, the walls stained by decades of neglect and faded wallpaper curling at the corners. Tom stood just inside the doorway, the weight of worn-out military surplus jacket barely shielding him from the chill that seeped beneath the drafts sneaking in through cracked window panes. His graying hair was damp with unease. His weathered face, a map of every hard-fought moment, tightened beneath the unforgiving glare of the panel sitting behind the desk. Words fell like cold stones. "Mr. Harris," the interviewer spat out the chosen last name, eyes sharp and unyielding. "We reviewed your file, your history, but given recent concerns about emotional stability, we cannot proceed with your application." A sigh, heavy and silent, spilled from Tom's lips as the office's stale air pressed down with suffocating weight. He swallowed, eyes scanning the room, the faded certificates nailed haphazardly, the flickering monitor casting sickly glows across the peeling paint, the threadbare carpet muffling all hope beneath years of decay. "I see." Tom's voice broke, raspy but steady. He tried to steady the tremble in his hands, fingers clenching unseen. Are you saying I'm not fit?" The panel's leader glanced sideways, irritation flickering briefly, thinly veiled. "It's best not to push, Mr. Harris. These things are for the safety of all involved." The room closed in, shadows pooling with deliberate languor like spilled ink swallowing the last traces of light. The brisk click of the door's lock echoed like a judge's gavel, sealing the verdict in the dim corridors of forgotten dreams. Tom's eyes dipped, no protest, no reprieve. The word unstable, emboldened by their silence, burned against the rawness beneath his ribs. He was a relic to them, worn, tested, and cast aside like a broken relic unfit for the new world. Outside, the brittle wind curled through deserted streets, rustling cracked leaves against rusted cars, stirring skeletal branches against a leaden sky. The gray clouds hung heavy, mirroring the storm that gathered behind Tom's eyes as he trudged along cracked sidewalks, the bitter scent of rain mixing with the sharp tang of forgotten memories. His boots echoed hollow steps on the fractured pavement, the sound swallowed quickly beneath the forlorn cries of distant crows. His breath clouded in the cold air, each puff a whispered confession of isolation. Passing a shattered shop window, Tom's reflection fractured across broken glass shards, his weathered face multiplied in fragmented shards. The faded tattoo on his wrist glimpsed briefly like a fading scar ghosting beneath the sleeve of his jacket. Inside that fractured image was a man stripped bare, shame clinging like the chill on his skin, rejection branded deep. Yet beneath the ragged edges, a faint light flickered, buried but persistent, like a stubborn ember waiting for breath. He paused by a neglected bench, collapsing onto it with a tired slump. The world around him seemed to tilt, the sky darkening into a bruise, the wind whispering secrets through the overgrown grass creeping through cracked concrete. The muffled distant sound of a church bell tolled slowly, each chime a pulse in the silence, a measure of time past and time lost. Tom's fingers drifted to the wooden chest strapped to his side. Heavy, unyielding, the wood scarred by years of silence and untold stories. His gaze lingered there, the weight of what it might contain heavier than the very air pressing down. A secret buried beneath dust and shadow, one he feared yet could not deny. The camera captured the worn lines of his face etched deep with the burden of invisible wars. The faint light caught the corner of his chestnut eyes, wet but unwavering. The sun dipped behind ragged rooftops, the town swallowed in twilight's slow embrace, shadows stretching ever longer, a prelude to the long night ahead. Tom exhaled slowly, the haunted silence enveloping him as he sat, alone in a world that had dismissed him. No victory, no solace, just the quiet ache of a man standing on the edge of a past he barely understood, and a future waiting to be revealed. The door to the office closed with a muted thud that resonated deep in Tom's chest, sounding more like a final sentence than a simple click. He lingered a moment in the cold hallway, the stale air thick with the scent of aged wood polish and fading hope. Soft echoes of footsteps and distant murmurs from the building's sparse inhabitants seemed to mock his solitude. Each breath drawn was a silent struggle against the heaviness swallowing his spirit. Outside, the sky was a smeared canvas of gray heavy clouds pregnant with creeping rain, mirroring the turbulent storm roiling inside him. He walked without direction along cracked pavement flecked with fallen leaves, their brittle edges whispering quiet elegies of forgotten seasons. His fingers brushed against the edge of his jacket pocket where the contours of the wooden chest rested, a physical weight matched only by the invisible burden of unspoken truths. A deep tremor coursed through his muscles, less from cold than from years of unvoiced memories pressing against fragile defenses. Tom's gaze dropped to the cracked puddles reflecting the grim sky, the distorted images folding and breaking as ripples formed with each careful step. His own reflection wavered, grizzled, worn, yet stubbornly enduring. Passing a broken street lamp shackled by rusted chains, the weak halo of its light flickered unpredictably, casting elongated shadows that intertwined with the curls of smoke rising faintly from an abandoned chimney. It was a landscape that breathed neglect, a town abandoned not just by others but perhaps by time itself. Yet within that decay, an unspoken promise lingered, a hint of stories waiting to be unearthed. Tom slid down onto a weathered bench nestled beneath the bent boughs of a dying oak. The grass, overgrown and tangled, brushed against his boots like whispered secrets. He drew a deep breath, the chill air cutting sharp as memories folded in silence. The distant call of a crow shredded the heavy quiet, a plaintive cry that resonated with his own sense of isolation. His mind spiraled through fragments, faces from war, fallen comrades, the haunting flicker of a father he scarcely knew. Questions clawed at the edges of his spirit. What was left undone? What truths lay shackled in silence? The wooden chest beside him seemed to pulse faintly in the gathering gloom, a lodestar of mystery and pain. A flicker of motion caught his eye, a fluttering sketch pinned to a bulletin board outside a shuttered cafe, edges curled and ink faded. His breath caught as a figure loomed briefly behind the board before vanishing into the mist, unseen but keenly felt. The sketch depicted a placia house set on a distant hillside, framed by towering pines and wrapped in cold fog. It was a place both foreign and strangely familiar, an echo of something deep buried beneath his memories. Tom's gaze hardened, the flicker in his eyes now sharper, armed with the invisible tendrils of untold stories reaching out. The cold no longer bit as deeply, something new stirred beneath the ruin of rejection. He rose slowly, the wooden chest a tether in his grip. The coming rain was soft now, a gentle tapping against the aging structure, a rhythm coaxing a fragile hope. With measured steps, Tom disappeared into the town's labyrinthine streets, the veil of twilight folding over him like a cloak. And beneath the weight of silence, a subtle pull shone, unbroken thread of resilience weaving him forward toward truths that might heal or shatter. The camera held on the empty bench, still bathed in diffused light, as the soft rustle of leaves whispered of secrets waiting to surface, a prelude to the journey just beginning. The postal box was battered, the paint peeling onto cracked wood, rain faintly pattering against the mailbox's metal ridges with a rhythm as steady as Tom's racing heart. He stood alone beneath the thick branches of an ancient oak, the sky overhead a bruised canvas of fading twilight that seemed to hang heavy with unspoken truths. The letter, crisp in his hands, bore the familiar marks of a distant past. The neatly looped handwriting and official seal spoke of a life complicated and concealed. Tom's fingers trembled slightly as he broke the wax seal, the scent of aged paper and ink rising like a ghost of memories long buried. The words unfolded before him, sparse but weighty: an unexpected inheritance, the abandoned house tied to his estranged father, and a mention of a wooden chest that had sat undisturbed for years in silence and shadow. The letter stirred a fragile pulse beneath the layers of doubt and pain that had kept him captive. It was an invitation, subtle but insistent, a beckoning to cross the threshold into a forgotten chapter, to confront a past both feared and desired. The weight of rejection and isolation that had pressed relentlessly now cracked, a glimmer of purpose flickering, faint but undeniable. Around him, the town whispered its secrets, the rustle of overgrown weeds, the creak of distant gates swinging on rusted hinges, and the thin, brittle cries of swallows nesting amid the decayed rooftops. It was as though the earth itself waited with bated breath as Tom folded the letter carefully and tucked it close to his chest. He turned toward the darkening roads, worn soles pressing into dirt where cracked asphalt faded into tangled grass. The wooden chest, a silent sentinel of untold stories, seemed to whisper on the cusp of the wind, its promise threaded through the smoky lines of fading sketches etched with trembling hands and fragmented memories. A shadow slipped past the rusted window frame of a shuttered house, unseen but keenly felt. Tom's gaze flickered, a spark of unease creeping beneath the burgeoning hope. The past was not just waiting, it was watching. With a slow, deliberate breath, he stepped forward into the approaching dusk, each footfall carrying him farther from the man who knew only shame, and closer to the one who might finally understand. The fractured reflection in a nearby cracked mirror caught the fading light, his weathered face split by the soft glow of ember skies, a man at the cusp of transformation. The path ahead was uncertain, lit only by scattered moonbeams and the quiet strength woven into the wooden chest's grain. Tom's heartbeat echoed like a slow drum beneath the stillness, a somber rhythm that promised both revelation and redemption. The camera held steady on the lonely figure as the last threads of daylight bled away, the town's whispered secrets folding into the night. In that vast silence, the faintest murmur of a new beginning took form, not in declared words but in the steady resolve etched deep within a man ready to reclaim his fractured legacy. The faded sign creaked on its rusted hinges as Tom pushed open the creaking gate, the sound splitting the dense silence of the abandoned town like a long-forgotten secret breaking free. The tangled overgrowth clawed at his boots as he stepped onto cracked concrete pathways, each step a tentative reclaiming of a place half-remembered, half-dreaded. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and aged wood, a mixture of decay and persistence that seeped into his bones. The house loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette etched against a bruised sky. Its windows, like dark, empty eyes, reflected the gathering clouds, while peeling paint whispered tales of neglect and time's ruthless passage. Tom's fingers tightened around the strap of the wooden chest, an anchor tethering him to the past he so feared yet sought to understand. Inside, the air was thick with dust and stale memories. Floorboards groaned softly beneath his weight, echoing through the desolate rooms where faint sunlight filtered through grimy panes, casting long, somber shadows. Each corner held fragments of story-stattered curtains fluttering in the chill drafts, scattered papers yellowed with age, and the faint scent of tobacco lingering like a ghost. His eyes caught on a narrow staircase, its steps steep and uneven, leading upward into darkness. A flicker of hesitation passed, but he climbed, heart pounding with an uncertain rhythm. At the top, the attic stretched wide, a cavernous space packed with relics, weathered sketchbooks, old photographs curling at the edges, and a solitary wooden chest, its surface nicked and faded, as if bearing the weight of untold secrets. Tom knelt beside it, fingers tracing the grain worn smooth by time and touch. The chest seemed to pulse with quiet gravity, a reservoir of hidden truths. He hesitated, the weight of what might lie within pressing heavy in his chest. The flickering light caught a folded piece of paper nearby, old sketches, faint and fragile, depicting places and moments that tugged at the fringes of his memory. One sketch in particular caught his breath, a view of the town's small church surrounded by gnarled oaks, but beneath the outline was a figure blurred and fragmented, as if hiding beneath layers of forgotten sorrow. His breath caught, the stirring of some buried fear mingling with a faint spark of curiosity. A soft creak behind him drew his gazia, sound too deliberate to be the house settling. He turned sharply, eyes scanning shadows curling at the edges of the attic. The emptiness stretched, yet the sense of being watched prickled beneath his skin. He whispered to himself, voice rough but steady, "What are you hiding?" Outside, storm clouds gathered faster, thick and heavy, muting the fading light. The first distant rumble of thunder rolled across the hills like a warning, threading tension through the thickening air. Tom's hand found the chest's latch, fingers trembling slightly as he prepared to transform mystery into revelation. The silence deepened, a slow breath before the unknown. As the lid creaked open, the dust rose in ghosts swirling in the wan light, unveiling not only of remnants but of a story waiting to be told. And somewhere beyond the attic's fragile sanctuary, eyes watched, patient and unreadable. The storm outside broke, rain hammering the roof with relentless fury, echoing the racing pulse inside the small, haunted sanctuary. The camera held on Tom's face a blend of fear, resolve, and the first fragile shimmer of hope as the wooden chest revealed its first secrets. The rain had begun again, soft but insistent, pattering a steady rhythm on the fragile roof of the old house. Tom moved slowly through the dim rooms, the smell of damp wood and fading memories thick in the air. His fingers brushed the edges of folded sketches laid bare on a table, their rough lines stirring echoes within a screen trapped beneath dust, a fragment of the father he barely knew. Each drawing seemed to pulse with its own weight, buildings sketched in hurried strokes, landscapes both strange and familiar, moments glimpsed from a past that teased at the borders of his mind. Yet, the clarity was elusive, as if the deeper truths lurked just beyond reach. A sharp knock at the door startled Tom, the suddenness breaking the quiet like a crack of lightning. He tensed, heart pounding beneath layers of wear-worn resilience, as the door creaked open to reveal a figure, Emily, a local woman with soft eyes shadowed by years of solitude. Her response was cautious, layered with the complexity of unspoken histories. "You're poking into things better left alone," she said quietly, voice edged with warning. "That old chest, those sketches, they're more than memories. They're burdens." Tom's gaze flickered, the truth in her words both a caution and a challenge. "I need to know," he replied simply. "For me. For them." The air between them thickened with unshared pain and fragile trust, and as the rain streaked the window panes, the shadows of doubt intertwined with the spark of determination that had begun to kindle within Tom. That night, alone with nothing but fading light and restless shadows, Tom opened the wooden chest. Inside, secrets waited: old letters, photographs, artifacts heavy with silence. One letter, carefully folded and yellowed with age, caught his eye. It bore the telltale marks of time and secrecy, and as he unfolded it, the carefully scripted words revealed a narrative he had never known: his father's double life, tangled in the town's history and hidden struggles. The revelation seared through silence, igniting a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, sorrow, and the fragile hope that understanding could birth redemption. Memories shifted, long-hidden fears awakened, and the tapestry of his past unraveled while new threads wove themselves taut. As dawn crept in gray light, Tom's silhouette appeared firm against the fragile light, the walls of the old house surrounding him a tangible echo of the complex legacy he had inherited. The sketches, once fragments of a shadowed past, now bore the weight of truths that demanded reckoning. But in the corner of his eye, movement flickered, an unyielding presence watching from the shadows. A figure, silent and indistinct, cloaked in the mist. The quiet threat reminded Tom that the past was not yet done with him. The camera held on his face a map of conflict, resilience, and unspoken promises as the rain intensified, washing the world anew but offering no shelter from the storm within. The journey forward was uncertain, fraught with danger and revelation, but beneath it all stirred a growing resolve: a man no longer fleeing from shadows, but stepping towards them, searching for the light his father's secrets might yet illuminate. The late afternoon sun filtered weakly through broken shutters, casting long, uneven bars of light that danced across the dust. Tom stood motionless in the half-lit parlor, the wooden chest open before him like a yawning wound in the quiet room. The air smelled of old paper, linseed oil, and the unshakable weight of forgotten years. He pulled out a bundle of letters bound with a faded red ribbon. Each delicate page bore the hand of a man who walked shadows and light: his father. The handwriting was precise, almost clinical, yet each word was laden with silence. Tom's eyes flicked over phrases hinting at secrets buried deeper than the foundation of the crumbling house, a double life interwoven with the town's history, a hidden presence that the townsfolk whispered about but never named. The words spoke of covert meetings, betrayals, and a cause that weighed on his father's soul, threatening to fracture their lives. His breath caught as he unearthed more sketches tucked beneath the letters. One drawing was of a hidden path winding into the thick woods outside town, places sketched from memories that didn't quite align with his own recollections. Another was a map marked with symbols that defied understanding, their meaning wrapped in shadow. A sudden noise snapped him to attention. The floorboard creaked sharply. Tom turned swiftly, heart pounding. Catching a glimpse of someone disappearing into the hallway's gloom, the unmistakable figure of someone watching him, their presence lurking in the fragile edges of his world. Fear mingled with anger as the truth clenched his chest. The betrayal was no longer abstract. It was breathing, watching through the cracks of this decaying sanctuary. The weight of his father's secrets settled on him with crushing resolve. Later, beneath the fractured ceiling, Tom sat amidst the scattered pages, eyes redrimmed and raw. The wooden chest sat silently between them, a relic holding more than memories. It was a vessel of revelation. His voice, rough and barely above a whisper, carried the burden of wrenching clarity. "He wasn't the man I thought." A pause trembled in the dim air. "And neither am I." The rain began tapping softly on the windows, a staccato accompaniment to his spiraling thoughts. Tom traced the faded tattoo on his wrist absent-mindedly, its blurred lines now an emblem of fragmented identity, a legacy tangled in half-truths and concealed motivations. The camera held tight on his weathered face, a portrait painted with shadows of loss, moments of courage, and a dawning reckoning. The revelation fractured his sense of self but also ignited the fragile embers of determination. Beyond the walls, the town whispered its secrets, unseen eyes observing the quiet unraveling. The scene closed on Tom lifting a hand toward the chest, fingers trembling as they hovered over its surface, an unspoken vow lingering in the space between uncertainty and the call to uncover the final truths lying just beyond the threshold. The air was thick with the acrid sting of burnt wood and shattered glass as Tom stood alone amidst the ruin of what once was a sanctuary. The house, his father's legacy, lay desecrated, walls slashed with cold, careless hands, furniture overturned like discarded memories, and the soft carpet where he once sought refuge now torn and stained. The faint echo of distant thunder rolled through the sky, a low grumble swallowed swiftly by the pressing silence. Rain began to fall, each drop falling heavy and cold, a relentless cascade washing over shattered dreams and peeling paint. It seeped into the gaping wounds of the broken house, pooling in cracks worn by time and neglect, mirroring the torrents pooling within Tom's heart. His eyes, bloodshot and hollowed by sleepless nights, scanned the remnants of the chest, its surface scarred but steadfast amid chaos. The wooden box, once a symbol of the mysteries held close, lay cracked open, its secrets spilled and strewn like last hopes under a violent sky. Tom's hands clenched into fists, the tension coiling through his weathered frame. His breath hitched, catching ragged between the oppressive weight of loss and the unrelenting storm twisting inside. Pain and betrayal clawed fiercely at the edges of his fading resolve. He moved slowly through the destruction, steps heavy, echoing hollow footsteps through the emptiness. Each room was a fragment of fractured memory, photos torn, sketches smeared and scattered, the remnants of a life lived between shadows and light. The muted gray light filtered through shattered windows, casting fractured reflections that danced over his lined face, ghost images of a man unraveling, caught between the past and the doom of solitude. A single, haunting whisper stirred the space. "What was I fighting for?" The words slipped from his lips, lost to the vastness of a home now cold and distant. The chest, once a vessel of hope and mystery, now symbolized the depth of hidden darkness, the weight of his father's secrets pressing down, suffocating and relentless. His shoulders sagged beneath the invisible burden, the silence wrapping around him like a shroud. Outside, the rain swelled into a desolate hymn, grinding against broken glass and hollowed walls. Tom sank to the floor amid scattered papers, the chill seeping through worn fabric into his bones. His fingers grazed a torn sketch-in image of a place half remembered yet eternally distant. The raw ache of disconnection flooded through him, an ocean rising unchecked. The camera closed in on his weary eyes, shimmering with unshed tears and the crushing weight of despair. The lines of a once unshakable spirit wore thin, slipping into shadow. The storm outside raged as the fragile sanctuary of his father's house shattered beyond repair, a mirror to the unraveling of a man drowning in the vast, consuming abyss of loss and betrayal. The scene lingered in muted silence, a solitary figure lost amid fragments, the haunting ache of a soul on the brink of collapse, and the cold grasp of a past that refused to let go. The night was absolute, a thick, suffocating blanket smothering the skeletal remains of the town. Tom sat slumped against the cracked plaster wall of the old house, the faintest whiff of damp earth and rot mingling with the stale breath of desolation. His eyes, glassy and hollowed by sleepless nights, stared blankly ahead, unfocused, as if searching for meaning between the distant stars swallowed by heavy clouds. Around him, the silence pressed with merciless weight, broken only by the slow drip of water leaking from a fractured pipe somewhere unseen. Each drop hit the cracked floor like a heartbeat, cold, isolated, relentless. The cold seeped into every fiber of Tom's bones, wrapped around his weary limbs in silent accusation. His breath came shallow, visible only in faint clouds that dissipated quickly, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. A tattered blanket hung loosely on his shoulders, a pitiful shield against the gnawing chill inside and out. His hands trembled, fingers tracing the worn surface of the wooden chest resting quietly before him, the chest that held fragments of a past both intimate and unknowable. He reached hesitantly toward the faded sketch tucked beneath its lid, the lines blurred and fragile, an echo of places lost to time and memory. The image shimmered faintly in the dim light, a lonely tree silhouetted against a gray sky, its branches gnarled and bare, reaching like desperate fingers toward a void. It mirrored the hollowness within, a single symbol capturing the profound emptiness that clenched his heart. A whisper escaped his cracked lips, barely audible. Why? The word hung suspended, swallowed instantly by the vast emptiness around him. No answer came, only the relentless drip, the creeping shadows, and the shudder of the house settling into its own ruin. Tom's body sagged further, every breath a struggle against despair's relentless tide. His fingers brushed against the worn tattoo on his forearm, once a mark of identity and strength, now just an indistinct faded memory beneath skin thinned by years of pain. Time fractured. Memories and regrets intertwined in a chaotic swirl that battered his soul. Faces of lost comrades, echoes of his father's elusive presence, and the bitter sting of betrayal converged into a blackened storm. He curled into himself, the cold earth beneath a mute witness to his unraveling. The world beyond his smallest reach, the house shrinking into shadow, the distant stars obscured by rain clouds that wept unseen tears. The camera closed in on Tom's face, the lines marked by sorrow deepened, eyes heavy with the weight of unseen scars. The soft glow of a lone candle flickered briefly nearby, casting quivering light across the wooden chest, a fragile beacon against the consuming dark. As the screen dimmed, all that remained was silence, a chasm echoing with the fragile shatter of a man lost within his own collapse, poised at the brink of surrender or awakening, where hope and despair waged a silent war beneath the starless vault. And in that stillness, the faintest pulse lingered, a beat, a breath, an unseen thread holding fast against the abyss. The night pulsated with an eerie stillness as Tom remained seated on the cold wooden floor, the remnants of the shattered house around him swallowed by shadows that seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. His breath came in shallow waves, the faint flicker of a dying candle casting trembling shapes across his weathered face. The air hung thick, almost suffocating, infused with the scent of damp wood and forgotten sorrow. Time had lost all meaning here. The minutes stretched endlessly, a ceaseless drone of silence broken only by the creak of the house settling and the distant howl of wind sneaking through cracked walls. Tom's fingers trembled as they glided over the worn surface of the wooden chest, the grain rough beneath calloused skin, a tangible link to the man who had been both stranger and father. Frustrated tears traced cold paths along his cheeks, blending with the grime collected from restless nights and lost hopes. The weight of betrayal, an invisible shackle, dragged him deeper into uncharted despair. What had he truly inherited? A legacy of lies? A life built upon secrets and deceit? Yet, as the candle sputtered low, a sudden glint caught Tom's eye, a faint outline beneath a loose board at the chest's base. His heart jolted, fingers prying gently, uncovering a hidden compartment. Inside lay a faded photograph, its edges curled and yellowed with age. He recognized it instantly, a young boy, no more than 10, standing beneath an oak much like the lone sentinel outside the house, eyes wide with innocence and untarnished trust. The silent image spoke volumes of a past untouched by shadows, of beginnings not lost but waiting to be reclaimed. For the first time in weeks, a fragile warmth stirred amid the cold ashes of his soul. Tom held the photograph close, the ghost of a long-forgotten smile flickering briefly on his lips. A quiet whisper echoed in the stillness, a promise of healing, however faint. He glanced toward the window, where dawn's first light began bleeding softly across the horizon, piercing the gloom with a gentle, forgiving glow. It was not a blaze of revelation but a quiet murmur of possibility, a light that invited him to rise, to seek answers, to confront the tangled truths that had haunted him. There was still much to uncover. The wooden chest held more than secrets. It held a pathway back to self, to understanding. And somewhere deep within that path, redemption awaited. The camera lingered on Tom's face, etched by weariness yet softened by the glimmer of hope. The journey was far from over, but the faintest spark had been kindled. As the scene faded, the house, the chest, and the solitary figure bathed in the tender glow of morning, standing at the fragile cusp between despair and renewal, silent, poised, ready for the next chapter. The first light of dawn crept cautiously over the horizon, brushing the overgrown remnants of the old town with gentle amber hues. The cold shadows that had once clung fiercely to Tom's world began to waver, softened by the delicate touch of burgeoning day. His silhouette stood framed by the cracked doorway of the dilapidated house, a figure carved from years of silence, grief, and quiet resolve. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decayed timber, yet beneath it stirred a whisper of renewal, like the faint scent of wildflowers amid the ruins. Tom's weathered fingers lingered on the wooden chest, rough and scarred by decades, its grain alive with the weight of untold stories. The earlier despair was tempered now by a tentative flame of remembrance and possibility. Inside the dim attic, streaks of pale sunlight pierced through the cracked windows, illuminating fragments of yellowed sketches scattered like remnants of a fractured dream. The images flickered with tentative life, half-familiar places, faces blurred by time, echoes of a past too tangled to unwind at first glance. Tom bent to gather the sketches, careful and reverent, as if each stroke of ink could reweave the shattered tapestry of his family's legacy. His gaze softened, shadows giving way to fragile grace, and the weight of years seemed to shift, no longer a crushing burden but a mantle of truth waiting to be claimed. A quiet breath filled the room, the creak of settling wood, the gentle flutter of loose papers stirred by a soft breeze slipping through a broken pane. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was sacred, a space where healing could begin. Tom's voice broke the silence, low and thoughtful. Maybe he tried to protect us both. His words hung in the muted air, a seed of empathy sown amid the ache. The fierce tension within him wavered briefly, granting room for forgiveness both for his father and, unknowingly, for himself. Outside, the trees swayed with reluctant grace, their long shadows retreating in the awakening light. The camera lingered on the tender dance of leaves and sunbeams, mirroring Tom's slow, cautious steps toward acceptance. He traced the edge of a sketch, a familiar outline of the town's forgotten chapel, and a faint smile traced the corners of his lips, hesitant yet genuine. Within that fragile gesture was the recognition of a path forward, obscure and uncertain, but undeniably present. Tom looked upward. The softening sky stretched infinite above. The darkness was not banished, only kept at bay by the quiet courage rising within the first breath of transformation. The scene closed with Tom reaching to close the wooden chest, his hands steady now, the echoes of past secrets cradled with care. A delicate warmth infused the room, mingling with the cool shadows. The journey was far from complete, but the first steps had been toward understanding, toward peace, toward the light beyond the silence. The sky above the abandoned town was bruised but breaking, the dark clouds surrendering to slivers of gentle, golden light. Tom stood on the worn steps of the town's war memorial, a simple stone monument weathered by time and memory. Each name etched into its surface was a whisper of sacrifices buried deep beneath layers of grass, dust, and silence. He traced his fingers softly along the engraved letters, the cold stone grounding him, anchoring his spiraling thoughts. The tumult within him had not yet settled. Shadows lingered in the corners of his mind, though now pushed back slightly by the creeping dawn. A photo slipped from his pocket, the same one of his younger self, cradled gently as if holding fragile hope. Against the backdrop of names, it pulsed with meaning. Behind him, the overgrown weeds rustled, carried by a tentative breeze. The silence held a fragile promise, punctuated by distant bird calls breaking the stillness like shards of light piercing through dusk. Tom's breath caught as he reached into the folds of the photograph's worn edges, drawing it close with reverence. This was more than a relic, it was the connection between what was lost and what could yet be reclaimed. Not just a father's story now, but his own. "Your scars are not only your own," he whispered, voice barely audible, folding into the quiet air. "They're a map. A legacy of pain and love intertwined." The past that had once suffocated him began to loosen, the edges fraying beneath the touch of understanding. His father's secrets were no longer a chain but a key, complex and jagged, yes, but holding the promise of freedom. Tom turned slowly, eyes steady and clear as they scanned the horizon where the first full rays of sunlight ignited the landscape. In that light, the ruined homes, the skeletal trees, and the fading traces of the town's once vibrant life shimmered with a strange new beauty, a testament to endurance. The wooden chest, resting at his feet, seemed less a burden and more a beacon. Its battered surface caught the light, each scratch a story, each knot a memory transformed by David's hope and struggle. With a steadying breath, Tom lifted the chest, feeling its weight like a promise renewed. Each step back toward the house was firm, purposeful, a stark contrast to the hesitant footsteps of weeks before. Inside, he methodically examined the letters and sketches, piecing together fractured moments of his father's hidden life. Clarity emerged slowly, but unmistakably acts of courage concealed beneath a veil of secrecy. The double life was not betrayal but sacrifice. His hands trembled as he held a letter unopened for weeks, the words frozen but alive beneath the seal. The room was suffused with the soft, golden light of late morning, shadows falling away in graceful surrender. His voice broke the solemn silence, soft, resolute. "This was never just about me. Or even him. It was about protecting what we couldn't always see." A distant creak snapped his attention, a movement in the shadows beyond the broken window. Eyes full of wariness and recognition met his own for a fleeting moment before vanishing. The moment hung fragile, charged with the tension of an unfolding truth and an unspoken invitation. Trust, always precarious here, was a fragile thread spun anew. Tom exhaled slowly, his shoulders easing beneath burdens half-borne, half-shared. The small room held its breath with him, a crucible of revelation and tentative hope. The camera lingered on his determined gaze, the wooden chest, and the sun's steady climb beyond shattered glass. The journey toward understanding was far from over, but a new chapter had begun, one inked with light, resolve, and the quiet power of discovery. The morning sun spilled its golden light slowly over the abandoned town, dissolving the heavy shadows that had clung like cobwebs to the decrepit buildings. Amidst the overgrown weeds and crumbling stone, Tom stood tall, the weight of years etched deeply into his weathered face, yet a newfound calm had settled there, softening the rugged lines. The wooden chest, once a vessel of torment and mystery, rested beside him, its scars now symbols of the journey endured and the truths unearthed. His gaze rose to the horizon, where the sky blushed with the soft promise of dawn, a radiant expanse stretching endlessly beyond the fractured silhouette of the town. The light caught the faded tattoo on his forearm, once a vague blur, now vivid against his skin, a testament to endurance, to battles fought and wounds made whole by understanding. Tom breathed deeply, the crisp air filling his lungs with a clarity that washed away the lingering fog of doubt. Behind him, the house stood restored in spirit, if not in form, a sanctuary reclaimed from darkness. The sketches strewn about, the hidden compartments discovered, and the letters unfolded formed a mosaic of a man both flawed and formidable, whose secrets had finally found their reckoning. "I see now," Tom murmured, voice steady and resolute, "that he was not the man I feared but the man I needed to understand." The truth illuminated more than the past. It cast light on himself, a reflection not just of legacy, but of redemption through acceptance. Amidst the ruins, Tom had pieced together not only his father's life but the map of his own healing. A gentle breeze stirred the fallen leaves, and for the first time in a long while, Tom smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, tinged with sorrow yet unburdened by regret. The fear that had once gripped him in silence loosened its hold, replaced by a fierce, unyielding peace. As the camera swept upward, the town basked in the dawn's glow, the soft hues painting a tableau of transformation and hope. Tom's figure remained steady amidst the tranquil light, the embodiment of a soul renewed, standing poised between shadow and sun. No longer a man haunted, but a man reconciled, a keeper of stories, a bearer of scars, a witness to the power of truth. His eyes, calm and unflinching, met the rising sun as if greeting an old friend. "The past does not define me," he said softly, "but it guides me." The frame held on Tom's steady silhouette, the wooden chest beside him a steadfast companion on the road ahead. With resilience woven through every fiber, he took a step forward, one foot unshaken on the soil of his reclaimed heritage. In that moment, the weary soldier found not only justice but grace. He stood ready, balanced on the threshold of what was lost and what could still be found. The scene faded slowly, the warm light lingering like a benediction and eternal promise that, through torment and truth, healing was possible and redemption was real. The landscape before him was bathed in the gentle, golden light of late afternoon air, soft with a quiet warmth that contrasted the storm of memories he had weathered. Tom sat on the porch of the once forgotten house, now restored but still bearing the scars of its turbulent past, the wooden chest resting at his side. Seasons had changed everything, yet here, amidst the overgrown vegetation and crumbling walls, a fragile peace was taking root. His gaze softened as he looked across the familiar silhouette of the town, now a mosaic of decay and rebirth. Each crack in the pavement, each vine creeping along the weathered wood, told a story, an echo of resilience, of hardships endured and ultimately, of forgiveness realized. His hands, roughened by years of service and sorrow, rested loosely on his knees. The worn fabric of his surplus jacket fluttered gently in the breeze, a small, comforting presence amid the vast silence. The memories of chaos, betrayal, and revelations flickered behind his eyes, each painful moment fading into the background of the present, replaced by a steadiness born of acceptance. The wooden chest, once a vessel of secrets and fears, now represented something else, a symbol of reconciliation and hope. It was no longer a prison but a bridge, inviting him to look forward, not back. He reached out carefully, fingers tracing the smooth surface, feeling the faint imprint of the past, now woven into the fabric of his being. A silent prayer rose within him, subtly deepening the calm. "It's over," he whispered, voice a soft caress against the whispering wind. The notion was fragile but true. His journey, with all its shadows and scars, had led him here to a place where he could finally let go. The distant horizon shimmered with the promise of tomorrow, the skies painted with hues of amber and lavender, confident yet tender. Tom's eyes lingered on the boundary between the past and the future, a gentle acknowledgement that understanding had softened the edges of pain, and forgiveness had begun to heal the deepest wounds. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the fullness of this moment, an embrace of quiet dignity and newfound purpose. The world seemed to hold its breath, honoring the stillness, as if confirming that the storm had passed, leaving behind a calm that was richer for its hardship. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing his figure sitting peacefully amidst the ruins, the house standing silent and proud behind him, a testament to resilience and new beginnings. The light waned softly, casting the scene into a tender embrace of reflection, hope, and the gentle acceptance of all he had endured and all that he had become. The golden hours stretched across the horizon, casting a warm glow that seemed to breathe life into the once neglected house, now a sanctuary of memories reclaimed. Tom sat quietly on the porch, the wooden chest beside him, its surface gleaming softly in the diminishing light. Around him, the overgrown landscape whispered gentle stories of resilience, of roots that had broken through despair and blossomed anew. His hands rested on his lap, fingers loosely entwined, as if in silent prayer. His gaze was lifted, not with the confusion or pain of earlier days, but with a calm acceptance. The journey had transformed him. The shadows that once haunted his every step now faded into a tapestry woven with understanding, forgiveness, and belonging. The faint breeze brushed through the open windows, carrying the scent of earth and hope, stirring the worn curtains. Light danced across the sketches scattered on a nearby table, faint images of places, faces, moments where hope and loss intertwined, each one a testament to a past that no longer defined him. Tom reached out slowly and traced the edge of a picture of a young man standing in a field, a quiet smile suggesting a future now finally within reach. His fingers lingered, trembling slightly, not from weakness but from the reverence for this second chance, a chance to reconcile the fractured pieces of his life. He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the silence. In that stillness, he felt the weight of years melt away, replaced by a profound sense of peace and unspoken gratitude for grace, for clarity. The eye of the storm had passed, and in its wake lay the calm of understanding. A single tear escaped, tracing a gentle path down his weathered cheek, shimmering in the last light, an homage to the pain endured and the love still present beneath. It was not just a flood of sorrow but an awakening and embrace of the scars that had shaped him and the truths that had set him free. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing his figure against the fading glow, the house and the land stretching towards the horizon. The wooden chest, now more than a repository of family secrets, stood as a symbol of hope and acceptance, an enduring testament to the journey from darkness into light. As the scene gently faded into twilight, Tom sat in quiet reverence, the silence now filled with the echoes of forgiveness, an unbreakable promise that, whatever the past held, the future was his to reclaim, alight with the promise of healing and renewal. The sun lingered at the horizon, casting a tranquil, amber glow over the restored house and the quiet town. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of a mourning dove filled the air, punctuated only by the soft, deliberate sound of Tom settling onto the porch steps. His silhouette, once burdened by shadows of doubt, now embraced the serenity of a man who had found peace, a fragile peace built on the bedrock of truth and reconciliation. He sat quietly, eyes closed, feeling the cool weight of the wooden chest beside him. It was no longer a container of secrets but a symbol of his reconciliation, a vessel transformed by understanding, by acceptance. His hand lingered on its surface, feeling the textured grains, the scars of time etched into the wood, echoes of a life intertwined with pain, love, and forgiveness. The world around him had settled into a gentle stillness, the vibrant hues of sunset fading into muted twilight. The house, with its weathered facade, stood quietly as a testament to resiliency's fractured walls now mended within, not by mortar but by the quiet strength of a man reborn. Tom's gaze drifted upward, soaking in the expansive sky. It was painted with strokes of rose and lavender, the horizon hinting at endless possibilities, peaceful, distant, yet undeniable. In his heart, a new chapter had begun, no longer haunted by shadows but illuminated by the honest light of understanding and love. A soft breeze caressed his face, carrying with it the scent of blooming wildflowers and the whispers of the pasta universal language of renewal. He opened his eyes slowly, the tears of bygone sorrows now transformed into quiet reverence. No words needed to be spoken. The silence spoke volumes, a hymn of healing, an ode to the journey from darkness into dawn. He reached out, gently placing a hand on the wooden chest, a final act of closure and acceptance. The gentle pulse of his heartbeat echoed in the quiet, steady and sure. He no longer saw his scars as marks of shame but as symbols of a legacy redeemed, of a family history finally understood. Behind him, the house stood steadfast, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun. The overgrown town stretched beyond, tender and resilient, a quiet reminder that even in ruins, life persists. The camera pulled back slowly, framing Tom in a tableau of peace, a soul at last unburdened by the weight of secrets and pain. In that stillness, the silence became a sanctuary, a quiet testament to the enduring power of truth and forgiveness. And in the lingering hush, the final image held an ancient tree standing tall against the sky, its roots deep and unshakable, a natural emblem of resilience and eternal hope. The screen faded into soft darkness, the echoes of that silent peace whispering into eternity. What hidden stories would you unravel? Share your thoughts below.